Captain John Harris rode along the edge of the village, his eyes scanning the horizon. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the fields. He felt a deep weight on his shoulders. Queen Elizabeth had sent word that a massive army was moving toward their lands. She called for all able men to join the defense. John knew this army would face dangers beyond what they had ever imagined. He turned to the young men following him, their faces tight with worry. Sam Taylor, a thin boy with sharp eyes, adjusted his pack nervously. Luke Mason, taller and stronger, clenched his fists, trying to look braver than he felt. Henry Cole, the quietest of the group, held his sword carefully. The villagers had no choice. The Queen expected them to fight. In the village square, soldiers gathered in ragged lines. The banners of Queen Elizabeth flew in the wind. The men looked worn but determined. John walked among them, checking on each man. He spoke with a calm authority that steadied their nerves. He knew that many of these men had never seen a real battle. Some were farmers, some craftsmen, and some had only fought in small skirmishes. They were poorly equipped, but their courage was strong. John called a meeting under the old oak tree near the river. He spread a rough map on a wooden table. His finger traced the enemy's path. The scouts had reported numbers, and they were overwhelming. John looked at each man. "We are outnumbered," he said, "but we are not outsmarted. We know this land. We know every hill and every stream. We can use it to our advantage." The men listened closely. Sam Taylor spoke first. "Captain, what if they trap us? They have more soldiers, more weapons?" John nodded. "That is why we cannot fight like they expect. We will move quickly. We will use the forests and the hills. We will strike where they are weak. We must trust each other." The Queen arrived in her carriage, her presence commanding attention. She stepped down, her eyes meeting John's. "My people must survive," she said. "You will lead them, John. Guide them with courage and wisdom. This land depends on you." The soldiers bowed slightly. Even the youngest boys felt a surge of pride. Their queen believed in them. That belief gave them a spark of hope. Preparations began immediately. Men sharpened their swords, checked their armor, and packed what little food they had. John trained them in formations and quick maneuvers. He demonstrated how to use the terrain for defense. In the afternoons, the men practiced marching through narrow paths and setting small traps with rocks and branches. Luke Mason showed surprising skill in guiding the younger men through difficult passages. Henry Cole's quiet determination encouraged those who feared failure. Nights were the hardest. Cold winds cut across the camp, and fires burned low. John sat by a fire with Sam Taylor. "I am scared, Captain," Sam admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. John put a firm hand on his shoulder. "Fear is not weakness. It is a signal. It tells you what matters most. Remember, Sam, you fight not just for yourself, but for your village and your queen. That is what makes you strong." Sam nodded, feeling a weight lift slightly from his chest. Rumors of the enemy's approach spread through the camp. John sent scouts to watch the distant hills. Each day brought news of movement, and each day the men grew more tense. Still, the soldiers trained. They ran drills, practiced weapon swings, and learned how to communicate silently, formed bonds that would hold them together in battle. The day before departure, Queen Elizabeth visited the camp once more. She spoke to the men and boys, praising their courage. "The road ahead is dangerous," she said, "but courage is not the absence of fear. It is facing fear together. Fight with honor, fight with heart, and remember that your land and your people depend on you." The soldiers cheered, their voices echoing through the valley. John looked at his men, feeling pride and concern in equal measure. As night fell, the soldiers rested with weapons close and eyes alert. John walked among them, silently promising to lead them wisely. He knew that the coming battle would test every skill, every nerve, and every ounce of courage. But he also knew that ordinary men, guided by strategy and heart, could achieve the impossible. Bannockburn awaited, and the ragged soldiers were ready to meet their destiny. John Harris led the ragged army out of the village at dawn. The morning fog hung low over the fields, hiding their movements from the enemy. Sam Taylor and Luke Mason walked close to John, their eyes sharp for any sign of danger. Henry Cole followed quietly, observing the terrain and giving advice when needed. The journey to Bannockburn was long. The men were tired from the previous days of preparation, but their spirits were steady. They moved through forests and hills, avoiding main roads to prevent early encounters. John instructed them to leave small signs for retreat if necessary, and to listen for any unusual sounds. The boys learned quickly, following orders without hesitation. Every step they took brought them closer to the enemy, but it also brought them closer together. The men shared small meals, swapped stories, and laughed to relieve the tension. Along the way, they encountered small groups of enemy scouts. John ordered ambushes that were swift and precise. Sam Taylor used his speed to circle behind and surprise them, while Luke Mason blocked their escape. The scouts were captured and questioned, revealing the size and movement of the enemy forces. John studied the reports carefully, adjusting their path to avoid traps and dangerous areas. The men gained confidence from each success, realizing that clever thinking could match brute force. Queen Elizabeth sent messages by rider, checking on their progress and offering encouragement. Her words strengthened the soldiers' resolve. She reminded them that every step forward was for their homeland. John shared the letters with his men, reading them aloud by the fire at night. The words sparked hope and reminded the soldiers of what they were protecting. Even the youngest boys felt a duty greater than themselves. They crossed rivers and climbed steep hills. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark proved helpful in navigating difficult terrain. Luke Mason carried wounded men when needed. Henry Cole found hidden paths that avoided enemy patrols. John watched his men closely, knowing that every skill could save lives in the upcoming battle. He encouraged them to trust one another and to move as one unit. Cohesion and teamwork were more important than numbers. One evening, scouts brought news that the enemy had set camp near Bannockburn. Their numbers were greater than expected, but their movements were slow. John saw an opportunity. He gathered his men and spoke clearly. "We are small, but we are fast and clever. We know this land. We will hit them where they least expect. Stay alert and follow orders without hesitation." The men nodded, understanding the importance of discipline and strategy. That night, the soldiers prepared traps along the narrow paths. They set logs and rocks to block enemy movement. Hidden pits were dug and covered lightly with branches. Archers were positioned on hills, ready to fire at the right moment. John taught Sam Taylor and Luke Mason how to lead small strike teams. The boys practiced silently, moving as shadows through the trees. Henry Cole checked every trap, making sure nothing would fail. The preparations were tiring, but the men felt stronger with each step. As dawn approached, the army rested near a small stream. John walked among them, checking weapons and morale. He reminded them that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to face it. Sam Taylor listened closely, gripping his sword tighter. Luke Mason adjusted his armor and gave a small nod of confidence. Henry Cole watched quietly, ready for the coming challenge. The march to Bannockburn had tested their endurance, but it had also built their skill and unity. John knew that the coming battle would be difficult, but the men were ready. They understood the land, they trusted each other, and they followed a leader who cared for every life. The enemy might have numbers, but the ragged army had determination, cleverness, and the courage to face the impossible. Bannockburn was near, and every soldier knew that the next day would decide the fate of their homeland. The day had come. The ragged soldiers reached the edge of the valley where the enemy waited. The army before them was large, well-equipped, and confident. John Harris studied the terrain carefully. He knew the enemy expected a simple fight. He would give them something else. He called his men together, pointing to the narrow paths, the hills, and the streams. "We are outnumbered, but we have the land and our wits," he said. "We move with speed, strike where they are weak, and hold together. Remember, courage and unity will win this battle." Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, and Henry Cole checked their weapons. Young boys and older men alike tightened straps and adjusted armor. The soldiers exchanged quick nods and silent looks of determination. John assigned small teams to guard the flanks and scout the enemy lines. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark took positions near the hills to monitor any movement. The enemy scouts had been spotted earlier, and John knew that the battle depended on clever maneuvers as much as brute force. As the first enemy soldiers moved into the valley, John signaled the hidden archers. Arrows flew with precision, hitting enemy soldiers and causing confusion. Luke Mason led a small team down the left hill to strike the enemy's side. Sam Taylor circled around to block their escape. The enemy was startled by the sudden attacks in the terrain they did not know. Their formation broke in some places, creating openings for the ragged soldiers. Henry Cole and other soldiers held the front line with swords and shields. They defended key points in the valley, preventing the enemy from advancing. Rocks were rolled down the hills, hitting soldiers and wagons. Small traps caused chaos among the enemy. John watched closely, giving orders that turned each moment into an advantage. The enemy tried to regroup, but the ragged soldiers kept moving with speed and strategy. The queen watched from a distant hill with a small group of guards. She saw the soldiers fighting with courage and cleverness. She signaled to John, sending reinforcements to critical points when needed. The sight of their queen gave the soldiers strength and reminded them of what they were defending. Morale was high, and every man felt the pride of protecting their homeland. Sam Taylor ran across a small stream, dodging attacks, and led a group of men to flank a group of enemy archers. They captured the enemy position and turned the archers' own weapons against them. Luke Mason fought fiercely alongside Henry Cole, holding the line as the enemy tried to push forward. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark intercepted enemy messengers, cutting off communication between different enemy units. John moved carefully, watching every action. He shouted orders and encouraged men in the thick of battle. His strategies were working. The enemy soldiers were disoriented, unable to predict the ragged army's next move. The boys and men who were once afraid were now bold and precise. They had trained for this moment, and every skill they had learned was being used effectively. As the sun climbed, the battle continued with intensity. John led a final push, sending small strike teams to attack weak points in the enemy's line. Soldiers moved like shadows through the valley, using speed and knowledge of the land to their advantage. The enemy commander tried to rally his men, but the ragged army's discipline and courage were too strong. Chaos spread through the enemy ranks. By the end of the day, the first clash had ended. The enemy had suffered losses and confusion. The ragged soldiers, though exhausted, stood victorious in the valley. John gathered his men, praising their skill and bravery. Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, and Henry Cole shared quiet smiles, feeling the pride of their first great success. The battle had shown that cleverness, courage, and unity could turn fear into triumph. Bannockburn was still ahead, but the ragged soldiers had proven that they could fight and survive against overwhelming odds. John Harris and his men advanced toward Bannockburn with caution. Scouts had reported a narrow path where the enemy would have to pass, and John saw an opportunity for a perfect trap. The men moved quietly through the forest, avoiding open spaces. Sam Taylor and Luke Mason checked the flanks while Henry Cole inspected every step ahead for hidden dangers. John spoke clearly to his men. "We will strike here. We know the land. We know their weaknesses. Patience and timing will be our weapons." Adam Reed and Nathan Clark carried rocks and logs to set traps along the path. The soldiers dug pits and covered them lightly with branches. Sharpened stakes were hidden at the bottom. Archers were placed on the hillsides, ready to fire when the enemy entered the trap. Every man knew his role and practiced movements in silence. John reminded them that every moment counted. Single mistake could cost lives. The first enemy scouts appeared at the edge of the path. John held his hand, signaling the men to wait. The soldiers crouched in the forest, ready to strike. As the enemy moved deeper into the narrow path, the archers fired precise arrows, hitting the leading soldiers. Panic spread quickly. The enemy tried to retreat, but many fell into the hidden pits. Rocks and logs were rolled down from above, striking enemy soldiers and wagons. The trap worked perfectly, causing confusion and fear. Sam Taylor and Luke Mason led strike teams to block the sides. They used speed and strength to prevent enemy soldiers from escaping. Henry Cole and others held the front, keeping the enemy contained in the trap. John moved along the path, giving orders and encouraging his men. The enemy commander shouted, trying to regain control, but the ragged soldiers had created chaos that could not be easily fixed. Queen Elizabeth watched from a hill, signaling reinforcements to critical positions. Her presence encouraged the soldiers. Knowing the queen was watching inspired them to fight with greater courage. The soldiers worked together with perfect timing. Each arrow, each move, and each push of the enemy contributed to the success of the trap. The boys and men who were once fearful now acted with precision and confidence. The trap caused the enemy to scatter. Small groups tried to escape, but Adam Reed and Nathan Clark intercepted them. The archers on the hills fired without mercy, keeping the enemy pinned. John directed his men to focus on the weak points, avoiding the strong units until the chaos had reduced their numbers. The soldiers moved quickly, never stopping, using every skill they had practiced. Sam Taylor climbed a small hill to signal a new approach. He saw a group of enemy soldiers trying to flank them. He ran down and led a small team to cut them off. Luke Mason and Henry Cole reinforced the front, keeping the enemy contained. John watched carefully, adjusting tactics as needed. The enemy had no plan for this clever use of land and traps. They were forced to fight on terms set by John and his men. The battle raged through the day. Rocks and arrows fell on the enemy, while the ragged soldiers moved with purpose and precision. The enemy commander realized his army was trapped and losing control. John pressed the advantage, sending teams to attack from the rear. Panic grew, and the enemy soldiers began to flee. The trap had worked beyond expectation. The ragged army held the path and forced the enemy to retreat. As evening came, John gathered his men. They were tired but victorious in this part of the battle. Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, Henry Cole, Adam Reed, and Nathan Clark stood together, proud of their skill and courage. John spoke to the soldiers, praising their precision and teamwork. He reminded them that Bannockburn was still ahead, and that the coming challenges would be harder. Yet the success of the trap had shown them the power of strategy, patience, and unity. The ragged army had proven they could face a larger force and turn the tide with clever thinking and courage. John Harris gathered his men at the edge of the forest near Bannockburn. The trap had worked, but the enemy still had strong forces ahead. The soldiers knew this would be the real test. Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, and Henry Cole checked their weapons, ready for the fight. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark positioned themselves near the hills to protect the flanks. John spoke firmly. "We are tired, but we cannot stop now. Every man must fight with courage and follow orders. We will press the attack and take the advantage." The enemy moved cautiously, wary of the trap they had just survived. John used this hesitation to plan a push. He sent Sam Taylor with a small team to flank the enemy on the left. Luke Mason and Henry Cole led the main force down the center. Rocks and logs were placed strategically to slow the enemy. Arrows flew from the hills, hitting soldiers and wagons. The enemy was forced to focus on multiple directions, unable to form a strong line. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark moved quickly to intercept enemy messengers and officers. By cutting off communication, they created confusion. John shouted orders, coordinating each move with precision. The ragged soldiers fought with courage, their confidence growing with every success. The young boys who had trained only days before were now moving with skill and determination, using every lesson John had taught them. The battle intensified. Sam Taylor led a strike team into the side of the enemy formation, surprising them. Luke Mason held the front line with Henry Cole, keeping the enemy contained while the flanking teams worked. The Queen watched from a distant hill, signaling reinforcements to points where the battle was fiercest. Her presence gave the soldiers strength and reminded them of what they were defending. The men fought not only for themselves but for their queen and their homeland. As the day wore on, the enemy commander was injured in a skirmish. The soldiers saw their leader fall, and fear spread among their ranks. John seized the moment, sending strike teams to attack weak points. Sam Taylor captured enemy banners, boosting the morale of the ragged soldiers. Luke Mason and Henry Cole pushed forward, leading charges that broke enemy lines. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark focused on smaller groups, ensuring they could not regroup. The soldiers moved as one unit, following John's orders and using the land to their advantage. Streams and narrow paths became tools in their hands. The enemy tried to push back, but the ragged army was too clever and too fast. Each move, each attack, was precise and coordinated. The boys and men fought fiercely, ignoring fatigue and pain. The sight of their queen and the thought of protecting their homes gave them strength beyond what they had imagined. Though John noticed a gap in the enemy line near a small hill. He signaled Luke Mason and Henry Cole to lead a push there. Sam Taylor followed with a strike team to block enemy retreat. The enemy soldiers were caught off guard and forced to fight on terms set by the ragged army. Confusion grew and their coordination broke down. The soldiers of John's army moved forward with determination, their bravery shining in every attack. By the late afternoon, the tide of the battle had changed. The enemy was disorganized and struggling to hold their ground. John rallied his men, praising their courage and skill. Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, and Henry Cole had become leaders in their own right, inspiring the younger soldiers. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark continued to protect the flanks and ensure no enemy could escape. The ragged army, though outnumbered, had turned the battle in their favor through strategy, courage, and unity. As evening approached, John looked over the battlefield. The enemy was retreating in parts, still fighting but no longer in order. Ragged soldiers held their lines, proud of their achievement. John knew Bannockburn was not over, but this push had proven that their determination, cleverness, and courage could overcome a stronger force. The men and boys of the army felt a deep sense of pride, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them next. John Harris knew the final fight at Bannockburn would be the hardest. The enemy still had strong forces near the river, and a careless move could cost many lives. Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, and Henry Cole checked their weapons and adjusted their armor. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark positioned themselves to guard the flanks. John spoke firmly. "We have faced them before, and we have won small victories. Now, we must strike with everything we have. Follow orders, trust each other, and move quickly." John spotted a weak point in their formation near a small hill. He signaled Luke Mason and Henry Cole to lead a strike team there. Sam Taylor and a small group moved behind to block any retreat. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark were ready to intercept enemy reinforcements. Every man knew his role. The plan was simple, but required perfect timing and courage. The enemy soldiers noticed the ragged army approaching. They formed a line and prepared for a fight. John moved carefully, observing every move, gave orders that kept the enemy off balance. Archers fired from the hills, striking key targets. Rocks and logs were rolled down from above, slowing enemy advances. The soldiers used the land to their advantage, turning every hill and stream into a weapon. Sam Taylor led his strike team with speed, surprising the enemy on the left side. Luke Mason and Henry Cole held the front line, keeping pressure on the center. Henry Cole fought fiercely, protecting young soldiers and keeping their formation strong. The enemy tried to regroup, but the ragged army's strategy and coordination were too strong. Every move was calculated and effective. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark intercepted enemy officers and messengers, preventing orders from reaching the rest of the army. Confusion spread among the enemy, weakening their resolve. John shouted commands, coordinating attacks and flanking maneuvers. The soldiers responded without hesitation. The boys and men who had trained only days before now moved like seasoned warriors. Courage and teamwork gave them strength beyond their years. The enemy commander ordered a final charge. John anticipated it and positioned his soldiers to counter. Sam Taylor led a swift attack from the side, hitting the enemy where they were most vulnerable. Luke Mason pushed forward, breaking the enemy line at the center. Henry Cole held firm, preventing any breakthroughs. Rocks, arrows, and clever traps added to the chaos, causing panic among the enemy. And as the sun rose higher, the enemy line began to crumble. John sent strike teams to hit weak points and block retreat. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark kept the flanks secure, ensuring no enemy could escape easily. Sam Taylor captured enemy banners, inspiring the ragged soldiers to fight with even more determination. Luke Mason and Henry Cole pressed forward, showing no fear despite the exhaustion. The Queen watched from a hill, her presence giving the soldiers strength and purpose. John saw the moment to push for final victory. He signaled all strike teams to advance. Soldiers moved with precision and courage, using every skill they had learned. The enemy was overwhelmed. Their numbers could not save them from the coordinated attacks. Panic spread, and the remaining soldiers fled toward the river, many falling into traps or blocked by the flanks. The ragged army stood victorious on the battlefield. John Harris, Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, Henry Cole, Adam Reed, and Nathan Clark gathered together, proud of their courage and skill. The soldiers had fought with heart and intelligence, proving that determination and strategy could defeat a stronger enemy. Bannockburn was won, and the story of their bravery would inspire others for years to come. The queen praised her soldiers, recognizing their courage and the clever tactics that had secured victory. The ragged men and boys had achieved the impossible, showing that courage, unity, and clever thinking could overcome any obstacle. The battlefield was quiet now. The enemy had fled, leaving behind broken weapons and scattered soldiers. John Harris walked among his men, proud but aware of the cost. Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, and Henry Cole checked on the wounded, offering words of comfort. Adam Reed and Nathan Clark helped gather the remaining supplies. The soldiers were tired, their bodies sore, but their spirits were strong. They had faced impossible odds and won. Queen Elizabeth arrived at the field, riding quickly with her guards. She surveyed the army, her eyes resting on John. She spoke loudly, her voice carrying across the field. "You have defended your land with courage and intelligence. Your bravery has saved our people and shown the power of unity and strategy." The soldiers cheered, proud that their queen recognized their effort. John felt a sense of relief and pride. Every man and boy had fought with all they had. Soldiers began cleaning and repairing their weapons. They helped each other, sharing water and food where they could. John spoke to Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, and Henry Cole. "You have led well and inspired others. Your courage has made a difference. Remember this day and what you can achieve when you work together." The boys nodded, feeling the weight and pride of their actions. They had grown beyond fear into leaders of men. Villagers began arriving from nearby towns, cheering and offering supplies. They brought blankets and food for the soldiers. John watched as the community joined to honor their army. The victory had not only been won on the battlefield, but it strengthened the bond between the soldiers and the people they defended. Every man and boy felt that they had become more than soldiers. They had become heroes of their homeland. John called a meeting near a small hill. He spoke to all the men and boys who had fought. "Today we showed that courage, unity, and clever thinking can defeat even the strongest enemy. Remember the lessons of Bannockburn. Train, prepare, and protect each other. We have done something remarkable here." The soldiers listened closely. Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, and Henry Cole shared their experiences, reminding others of the bravery and cleverness that had won the day. As the sun set, the army made camp on the field. Fires burned brightly, and soldiers shared stories of the battle, laughter mixed with quiet reflection. John walked among them, ensuring all were safe and accounted for. He spoke to the young boys who had been scared at first, showing them that bravery was born in action. They nodded, feeling proud of their growth and the difference they had made. The queen stayed with the soldiers through the evening. She spoke with John about the strategies and bravery that had saved the day. She praised the courage of Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, Henry Cole, Adam Reed, and Nathan Clark. She reminded everyone that Bannockburn was now part of history. The victory would inspire future generations, proving that intelligence, courage, and unity could defeat any foe. The soldiers felt the weight of their achievement and the honor of defending their land. By night, the battlefield was calm. John Harris looked at his men, proud of their growth and courage. Sam Taylor, Luke Mason, Henry Cole, Adam Reed, and Nathan Clark stood together, sharing quiet smiles. They had faced fear, fought with skill, and led others. Bannockburn would be remembered as the day a ragged army defeated a stronger force through bravery, strategy, and unity. John knew that the memory of this battle and the lessons learned would remain with every soldier and boy for the rest of their lives. Their courage and determination had created a legend that would never be forgotten.